For eons, we stared into the black, projecting our deepest longings onto the distant, silent stars. We hungered for a twin. A sanctuary. When our telescopes finally pierced the veil of LHS 1140b, 48 light-years away, we thought we had found it. A rocky world resting in the gentle, amber embrace of the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot. Not too cold. And then, the ultimate breakthrough, a thick, wrapping atmosphere. A cosmic gasp of relief echoed through our observatories. We called it the Promised Land. But the cosmos does not write fairy tales, it crafts cosmic ironies. Look closer at this mirage. What we mistook for the breath of life is a suffocating shroud. Our instruments did not detect the sweet, familiar whisper of oxygen or the nurturing touch of nitrogen. Instead, they caught the ghost of helium, bleeding slowly into the freezing void like a dying breath from a punctured lung. This world is tidally locked, trapped in a perpetual, unblinking gaze with its dim red sun. One hemisphere is a scorched, blistered wasteland of endless glare, the other, an eternal, silent graveyard of absolute ice. And between them, in the thin ribbon of twilight where we hoped liquid oceans might ripple, lies a crushing, heavy atmospheric pressure that would flatten human bone to dust in milliseconds. But the true terror of the Goldilocks mirage is not the physical violence of its climate. It is the existential silence. As we analyze the light filtering through that alien sky, we realize this atmosphere is a cosmic tomb. It is a thick, stagnant soup of heavy gases, trapping the heat of a dying red dwarf, sealing in a world of deep, dark, lifeless oceans hundreds of miles deep, under pressure so intense the water at the bottom has turned into exotic, burning ice. There are no shores here. No soil. Only a global, suffocating abyss of liquid and gas, screaming with silent, crushing gravity. Underneath those black waves, there is no spark of life, only the cold, heavy grinding of planetary compression, a world locked in a permanent, watery chokehold. We looked across the light years searching for a mirror, but we found a warning. The Goldilocks zone is not a promise of life, it is a cruel statistical trap, a cosmic bait and switch. The universe has spent billions of years preparing this perfect, atmospheric cradle, only to fill it with a silent, pressurized hell that mocks our very existence. If a world so perfectly positioned, so beautifully wrapped in a blanket of air, is nothing but a hostile, suffocating graveyard, then what does that say about the rest of the dark cosmos? We are left standing on the edge of the abyss, realizing that we are entirely, beautifully, and terrifyingly alone. Look at the starlight. For 300 years, we believed the dark between the stars was a passive void, a cold canvas of hydrogen waiting for our curiosity. Then, our deepest space observatories caught the glint of a sister world, a pale blue marble suspended in the habitable zone of a dying red dwarf. We called it a triumph. In our arrogance, we celebrated the detection of water vapor and nitrogen, the familiar, comforting chemical thumbprint of a living world. But when the spectrograph isolated the infrared light filtering through that distant sky, the data did not sing of life. It whispered. In the suffocating quiet of the control room, under the harsh hum of cooling servers, the jagged lines of the spectrum began to warp. A spectroscopic signature is supposed to be a static barcode of elements, an honest, predictable reflection of molecules absorbing light. But this barcode was shifting in real time. It was breathing with a slow, biological rhythm. Deep within the mid-infrared bands, where we expected the gentle signature of carbon dioxide, there lay a profound, impossible anomaly. An artificial compound, infinitely complex, that defied every known law of organic chemistry. It was a molecular lattice that did not merely block starlight, it devoured it, leaving behind a patterned, rhythmic silence. When the supercomputers translated those empty frequencies, a cold, physical dread settled over the team. The atmosphere of this Earth-like paradise was not a product of volcanic outgassing or biological evolution. It was a shroud. The air was saturated with a synthetic, self-replicating aerosol, a planetary-scale particulate that behaves like a collective, non-biological nervous system. It is a gas that remembers. It is an atmosphere that listens. Every time the planet transits its host star, the light filtering through this toxic, shimmering haze carries a repeating, mathematical cadence. It is not a beacon of welcome. It is a record of agony. A molecular scream etched forever into the very air of a dead and desecrated world. We looked across the cold cosmic ocean hoping to find a mirror, a reflection of our own bright future, a validation that we are not entirely alone. Instead, we found a tomb wrapped in a sentient fog. The terrifying truth of this habitable world is not that it is empty, but that the air itself is the predator. It is the monument of a civilization that realized, too late, that in the deep dark of the cosmos, making yourself heard is the ultimate invitation to the slaughter. And now, by decoding their final whisper, we have just answered. To the untrained eye, the spectral data of LHS 1140b, or whatever designation we give this masquerading twin of Earth, was a triumph. A thick, protective envelope of nitrogen and carbon dioxide, shielding a world of liquid water. But science is not merely the act of seeing, it is the curse of translating. When the deep space telemetry from the James Webb successors was fed into the acoustic synthesizer, we did not hear the gentle sigh of a living biosphere. We heard a frequency that defies the very geometry of nature. It is a sound that begins in the gut, a subaudible vibration that rattles the teeth and chills the blood before it ever reaches the ear. A violent, rhythmic pulsation. If you were to stand on that dark, basaltic shoreline, beneath a bloated red sun, you would not hear the familiar whisper of wind. You would hear a colossal, planetary-scale resonance. The atmosphere of this world is so dense, its gravity so unforgiving, that the massive storm systems do not merely blow, they scream. The pressurized air itself acts as a gargantuan instrument of torment, vibrating at a frequency that matches, with horrifying precision, the acoustic signature of human vocal cords under maximum physical trauma. But the true terror is not merely acoustic. It is chemical. When we dissect this planetary scream, we find the anatomy of a global execution. The atmospheric composition reveals an impossible abundance of highly toxic, synthetic aerosols and heavy, suffocating compounds that do not occur in nature. This is not the slow, organic breath of a thriving forest. This is the chemical ash of a highly advanced civilization that choked to death in its own cradle. The atmosphere is a tomb, sealed tight by gravity, preserving the final, agonizing gasp of an entire species. Every gust of toxic wind carries the molecular ghosts of billions of lives that ended in a singular, terrifying instant of planetary asphyxiation. We looked into the dark of the cosmos hoping to find a mirror, a reflection of our own glorious potential. Instead, we found a monument to our inevitable end. This habitable world is not waiting for us to colonize it. It is warning us. It is a cosmic siren, howling into the frozen vacuum of space, begging anyone who can hear to turn back. For in the silence of the universe, the only thing louder than the void is the scream of a dead world that refuses to be forgotten. And as the audio file loops endlessly in the dark of our control rooms, we realize the most terrifying truth of all: the scream isn't just a recording. It is a prophecy. We believed we had found a twin. A pristine, azure marble suspended in the velvet dark, wrapped in a thick, protective blanket of nitrogen, oxygen, and water vapor. We called it habitable. We called it a second home. But we did not understand the chemistry of a planetary corpse. When the light of its host star filtered through that alien sky, our spectrometers did not register the breath of a living world. They recorded an endless, agonizing exhalation of decay. This is the necrobiosphere. Imagine an atmosphere thick with the sweet, cloying stench of planetary-scale decomposition. The oxygen we so eagerly celebrated is not the joyful byproduct of photosynthesis, it is the volatile, reactive exhaust of a rotting global organism that died a billion years ago, yet refuses to quiet down. Every breath of wind on this world carries the molecular fragments of ancient, liquefied flesh. The clouds are not pure water, but a suspended aerosol of cellular ruin, weeping a greasy, acidic rain onto a continent-spanning graveyard of bone-white stone. Here, the traditional boundary between biology and geology has dissolved into something unspeakable. The planet is not dead in the way Mars is dead. Mars is a sterile, clean tomb. This world is a rancid, self-sustaining engine of putrefaction. It is a closed-loop system where the dead do not return to the soil to nourish new life, because there is no new life left to feed. There is only the rot, consuming itself, generating its own unnatural heat, and churning out methane. It mimics the metabolic signatures of a thriving ecosystem to any distant, naive observer. It is a cosmic decoy. A beautiful, glowing trap designed to lure us into the dark. To stand on this surface would be to drown in the vaporized memory of a slaughtered world. Your lungs would instantly fill with the gaseous remnants of things that once crawled, swam, and perhaps even looked up at the stars with hope. It is a terrifying realization: the universe does not just cultivate life, it preserves its decay, transforming entire worlds into giant, off-gassing mausoleums. We spent centuries searching the void for a sign that we are not alone. And now, staring into the spectral data of this beautiful, suffocating nightmare, we must confront a deeper, more paralyzing dread. What if the habitable zones of the cosmos are not gardens waiting to be seeded, but a vast, silent network of planetary hearses? What if the universe is not a nursery, but a graveyard, and the wind we hear in the dark is just the phantom sigh of the long-forgotten dead? We wanted to find a twin. A mirror held up to the dark, reflecting oceans, clouds, and the familiar, comforting chemistry of home. Instead, we found a throat. When our deepest space telescopes pierced the shroud of this nameless sapphire anomaly, they didn't just detect gases. They detected a pulse. Carbon dioxide levels do not merely fluctuate here, they rise and fall in a rhythmic, agonizing cadence. Every 11 minutes, the atmospheric pressure drops, drawing the planet's heavy nitrogen-methane shroud inward, clinging tight to the jagged, obsidian crust. Then, with the agonizing slowness of a dying giant, it exhales, pushing a massive wall of humid air back into the vacuum of space. Imagine standing on that barren shoreline. There is no wind in the traditional sense. There are no thermal currents born of solar warmth or planetary rotation. Instead, there is only the draft. A cold, damp inhalation that pulls the heavy, sulfur-scented air down into the planet's abyssal trenches, leaving you gasping, your pressure suit groaning under the sudden vacuum. And then, the release. A warm, humid sigh that smells faintly of ozone and ancient, wet copper. It rushes past your visor, leaving a film of greasy, organic condensation that distorts the dim red light of its dying star. You are not standing on a rock. You are standing on a chest. Every step you take on this soil is a step upon a living, flexing muscle. For centuries, humanity defined life by its borders, cells, skins, membranes. We assumed a living world would be populated by things that crawl, swim, or fly. We never prepared for the terrifying possibility that the world itself is the organism. What we called habitability was merely the temperature of its flesh. What we called biosignatures were the chemical waste of its metabolism. It does not think as we think. Its thoughts are measured in tectonic shifts and atmospheric tides, a slow, primordial consciousness dreaming in the cold, silent dark of the cosmos. It is an ancient god made of gravity and gas, and we have just stepped into its lungs. And now, the most terrifying realization of all has begun to dawn on the scientists at Mission Control. The telemetry is shifting. The inhalation cycle is growing shorter, sharper, echoing like a heartbeat entering cardiac arrest. The gasps are becoming shallower, more frantic. The planet is not merely breathing. It is suffocating. And as our landers drill deeper into the crust, seeking answers in the dark, we must ask ourselves, are we the cure, or are we the pathogen?